biodefense programs.
Response to the anthrax attacks and the bioterrorism initiative has been to launch a nationwide billion-dollar campaign to, quote, defend us from unknown terrorists. But the character of this program is roughly as follows. You say, well, what would the terrorists come up with? What's the nastiest, most dangerous, most difficult to diagnose, difficult to treat microorganisms that we can think of? Well, let's go bring that organism into existence so that we can figure out how to defend against it. The fact of the matter is, it's indistinguishable from an offensive program in which you would do the same thing.
Francis Boyle, a leading opponent of bioweapons, is alarmed at what's happened in the wake of the anthrax attacks.
It's like the Wild West out there, and the government's, just dispensing money all up and down. This massive proliferation of the biolabs all over the country, unregulated research, development, testing. There's too much money at stake here for anyone to say no.
This is the real legacy of the anthrax attacks. Since 2001, the U.S. government has budgeted over $50 billion for biodefense, much of it for private companies. Investigative journalist Edward J. Epstein finds this troubling.
It clouds the chain of responsibility because private companies are owned by other private companies. And not only that, but it creates a mask for what could be government action, because now governments can do things and hide behind private companies.
A poster child for privatized biodefense was the Bioport Corporation. It was the sole supplier of a controversial anthrax vaccine. Since 1998, the vaccine has been mandatory for frontline U.S. troops. But hundreds of enlisted men and women refused the vaccine. They claimed it was unsafe. Despite lawsuits to stop the mandatory vaccination programs, more than 1 million military personnel have received these anthrax shots. In 2003, Private Kamila Iwanowska refused to take the anthrax vaccine and was court-martialed.
I read a lot of side effects that some troops experienced from taking it previously. I also got familiar with the Gulf War syndrome at the time. I read about, I should call them victims, I guess, people who got sick, violently sick from anthrax vaccine.
Dr. Meryl Nass testified as an expert defense witness. She's treated soldiers suffering side effects she attributes to the vaccine.
Multiple sclerosis, lupus, illnesses that are equivalent to Gulf War syndrome, where people have memory loss, muscle and joint pain, and severe fatigue, a variety of gastrointestinal disorders. There really is quite a lot of data to show the vaccine is unsafe.
Private Iwanowska was found guilty of disobeying orders and given a dishonorable discharge. The vaccine Iwanowska refused to take had been developed by Fort Detrick Army scientists, including, according to the FBI, anthrax attack suspect Bruce Ivins. Bioport Corporation is today called Emergent Biosolutions and has received close to $1 billion in government contracts. When asked to respond to concerns raised about the safety of its vaccine, the company issued the following statement. Quote, "Our vaccine is the only FDA-approved vaccine to prevent the infection of anthrax, has been studied more than just about any vaccine in the United States, and has been deemed safe and effective." End quotes. In 2008, the U.S. signed a law declaring a 7-year anthrax emergency. Millions more doses of the anthrax vaccine were ordered for emergency response teams, and Fort Detrick underwent massive expansion.
So if you add it together, it does appear that we're gearing up to fight biological and chemical warfare.
Could the 2001 anthrax attacks really have laid the ground for the unthinkable? Journalist Bob Coen was coming to a frightening realization. The anthrax attacks may be turning the biodefense programs intended to protect us into programs that could trigger a biological arms race. That's what Francis Boyle fears. He's the author of the Biological Anti-Terrorism Act. It prohibits U.S. citizens from developing bioweapons for offensive use.
If you have a look at the latest Department of Defense Chemical and Biological Defense Program report to Congress, the Pentagon is now in a position, in my opinion, from the reading through the latest report, that they could launch biowarfare by means of anthrax anywhere in the world today. They have all the equipment, capability, the troops have been inoculated, and everything's ready to go.
Professor Boyle warns that such planning has global consequences.
They are calling for a computer model to simulate a worldwide strike with 5,000 biological weapons. It's in the document. And it uses the term strike. That's offensive.
Indeed, Russian Premier Vladimir Putin has warned the West that new breakthroughs in bio, nano, and information tech could lead to a new arms race.
It's now obvious that a fresh round of a new arms race has started. Unfortunately, it is not something that...
Some observers suspect the Russians themselves continue to develop bioweapons at sites like the military lab from which anthrax escaped in 1979. Could the embers of the Cold War reignite and threaten the planet with a biological war? One man in a position to know was Ken Alibek. He was the #2 man in the Soviet biowarfare program before he defected to the West. Alibek went on to consult with the U.S. government and assisted in the FBI's anthrax investigation. He worries about the disappearing line between biodefense and bioffense.
The United States is spending a huge amount of money, billions and billions of